Captain Zhao leaned back in her observation chair aboard the Wandering Star, her eyes fixed on the view screen displaying the swirling nebula outside. The ship hummed with its familiar rhythm, a sound she'd grown to love over the past 3 years of deep space exploration. Behind her, gathered in a semicircle on the deck, sat 7 young Kixari cubs, their fur rippling with colors that shifted between curious blue and excited orange. The Kixari were a recent addition to the galactic community, discovered only 2 cycles ago on a lush forest world they called Vixala. Their species was remarkable in many ways, particularly their empathic, color-changing fur and their insatiable hunger for stories. These 7 cubs had been sent aboard the Wandering Star as part of a cultural exchange program, meant to learn about humanity and other species. "Tell us another story, Captain Zhao," chirped Mickey, the smallest of the cubs, her fur glowing bright yellow with anticipation. "Tell us about humans doing impossible things." Zhao smiled. She'd been telling stories for the past 2 hours, ever since the cubs had finished their educational modules for the day. Their caretaker, an older Kixari named Vesha, had gone to the medical bay for a routine checkup, leaving Zhao in charge. The captain didn't mind. She actually enjoyed these storytelling sessions. They reminded her of reading to her nephew back on Earth. "All right," Zhao began, settling deeper into her chair. "This one is about the colony ship Perseus and the black hole that almost swallowed it whole." The cubs shuffled closer, their ears perked forward. Even Tarn, the eldest at nearly 9 standard years who usually pretended to be too mature for stories, leaned in with interest. "It happened about 50 years ago, when humanity was still learning how to navigate deep space properly," Zhao said, her voice taking on the dramatic tone she used for the best tales. The Perseus was carrying 20,000 colonists in cryosleep, heading for a new world called Haven's Gate, but their navigation computer made a critical error. They dropped out of FTL travel right on the edge of a black hole's event horizon. "What's an event horizon?" asked Pip, a middle cub with perpetually messy fur. "It's the point of no return," Zhao explained. "Cross that line, and not even light can escape." The ship's captain, a woman named Rebecca Okonkwo, woke up to alarms blaring everywhere. Her ship was being pulled toward certain death, and she had maybe 10 minutes before they crossed the event horizon. The cub's fur rippled with anxious purple hues. Captain Okonkwo didn't panic, though. "Humans have this thing we do when faced with impossible situations. We get creative." Zhao paused for effect. She ordered her crew to wake up every engineer on board, emergency protocol. Within 5 minutes, she had 30 confused but determined engineers in the engine room, all working on the same problem. "Did they escape?" Mickey asked breathlessly. "Well, the math said it was impossible. Their engines couldn't generate enough thrust to break free. The gravitational pull was too strong. But here's where humanity's stubbornness comes in. One of the engineers, a young man named Chen, had a crazy idea. He suggested they use the black hole itself." "How?" several cubs asked at once. "They plotted a course that would take them closer to the black hole, not away from it. They'd slingshot around it, using the immense gravity to build up speed, then angle away at just the right moment. The margin for error was impossibly small. They had to time it perfectly, down to milliseconds." Zhao's eyelids felt heavy. She'd been awake for nearly 20 hours, having pulled a double shift to cover for her second officer who was ill. The warm lighting of the observation deck, combined with the gentle hum of the engines, was making it hard to concentrate. So Captain Okonkwo made the call. She trusted her engineer. They fired the maneuvering thrusters and dove deeper toward the black hole. The ship started shaking. The gravitational forces were tearing at the hull. Everyone thought they were going to die. But Chen's calculations were perfect. At the exact right moment, they fired the engines at full power and... Zhao's words slowed. Her head drooped slightly. The exhaustion she'd been fighting finally caught up with her. And they They managed to... Her eyes closed. The velocity they gained from the slingshot... A soft snore escaped her lips. The 7 cubs stared at their human captain in shock. Their fur flickered between confused gray and disappointed brown. They looked at each other, uncertain what to do. "Did she just fall asleep?" Tarn whispered. "Right in the middle of the best part," Mickey complained, her fur turning an indignant orange. For a long moment, the cubs sat in silence, waiting to see if Captain Zhao would wake up. But the human remained slumped in her chair, breathing deeply and evenly. She was clearly exhausted. Pip tilted his head thoughtfully. "Should we wake her?" "No," said Kessa, one of the older cubs with wise silver streaks in her fur. "Humans need sleep just like we do. Captain Zhao works very hard, she's tired." "But we don't know how the story ends," whined Mickey. Tarn's fur shifted to a determined green. "Then we'll finish it ourselves." The other cubs looked at him in surprise. "How?" asked Vero, the quietest of the group. "We don't know what happened." "We know how human stories work," Tarn said confidently. "Captain Zhao has told us dozens of them. They always follow patterns. Humans face impossible odds. Humans refuse to give up. Humans use their cleverness or their stubbornness or their ability to work together. And humans survive." Kessa nodded slowly, her fur brightening with understanding. "That's true. Every human story has those same themes. So we just need to think like humans," Pip added, getting excited. "What would humans do in that situation?" Mickey bounced on her haunches. "Let's figure it out together." The 7 cubs formed a tighter circle, leaving Captain Zhao to sleep peacefully in her chair. They began discussing the story's ending, each contributing ideas based on what they'd learned about humanity over the past few months. "The ship was falling toward the black hole," Tarn recapped. "They tried the slingshot maneuver. What happens next?" "The engines would be working at maximum capacity," Kessa reasoned. "Captain Zhao has taught us that human ships can be pushed beyond their normal limits in emergencies. They probably overloaded the reactors." "Wouldn't that be dangerous?" Vero asked nervously. "Everything about the situation was dangerous," Pip pointed out. "But humans take calculated risks. Remember the story about the Mars colony and the oxygen crisis? They did something risky because the alternative was certain death. So they overloaded the reactors," Tarn continued. "The ship gained speed from the slingshot effect, but that alone wouldn't be enough, would it?" Mickey's fur rippled with thoughtful yellow. "What about other humans? Captain Zhao said there were 20,000 colonists in cryo-sleep. Were they still asleep?" "They must have been," Kessa said. "Waking them all would take too long and wouldn't help with the navigation." "But maybe some of them woke up anyway," suggested Vero quietly. "If the ship was shaking and alarms were going off, maybe the cryopods had safety protocols that woke some people up." The cubs considered this. It made sense. "So imagine this," Tarn said, his storytelling voice remarkably similar to Captain Zhao's. "The ship is being torn apart by gravitational forces. People are waking up from cryo-sleep, confused and scared. But instead of panicking, what do humans do?" "They organize," Pip said firmly. "Humans always organize. Even in chaos, they form groups and assign roles." "Exactly," Tarn agreed. "So the colonists who woke up, they immediately started helping. Some went to engineering to assist with the overloaded reactors. Others went to structural integrity stations to reinforce the hull with emergency force fields. Everyone who could help did help." Kessa added, "And the crew on the bridge, they had to make split-second decisions. Captain Okonkwo would have been calling out orders while watching the trajectory calculations. The pilot would have had steady hands even though they were all terrified." "What about Chen?" Mickey asked. "The engineer who came up with the plan?" "He would have been in the engine room," Vero suggested, "making adjustments in real time." because his initial calculations were good, but with a black hole, everything changes every second. He'd have to keep updating the equations. The cubs were fully engaged now, their fur bright with excited colors. They were building the story together, piece by piece, using everything they'd learned about humans. So the moment comes, Tarn continued dramatically. They're at the closest point to the black hole. The ship is experiencing time dilation. Seconds feel like hours to the crew. The hull is groaning. Rivets are popping. Some compartments have already been sealed off because they're too damaged. And then, Pip jumped in, Captain Okonkwo gives the order. Fire all engines. Full power. Everything they have. The ship lurches, Kessa said, caught up in the storytelling. The acceleration pushes everyone against walls and floors. The G-forces are crushing, but humans built their ships tough, and humans themselves are tougher than they look. The black hole doesn't want to let them go, Mickey added. It pulls and pulls. For a moment, it seems like they won't make it. The engines are screaming. The reactor temperature is critical. Chen has to make a choice. What choice? Vero asked, genuinely invested in the story they were creating. He can push the reactor past the red line, giving them the extra thrust they need, Tarn explained. But if he does, there's a good chance the reactor will explode, killing everyone. Or he can play it safe, but then they definitely won't escape the black hole's pull. What does he choose? Mickey asked. The cubs thought about this, considering what they knew about human nature. He pushes past the red line, Kessa said confidently. Because humans would rather risk everything on a chance to survive than accept certain doom. That's what makes them human. The other cubs nodded in agreement. That felt right. So Chen overrides the safety protocols, Pip continued. He pushes the reactor to 120% capacity. The entire engineering section is glowing with heat. Alarms are screaming everywhere. But it works. The extra thrust is just enough, Tarn said. Combined with the slingshot velocity and the perfectly timed engine burn, the Perseus breaks free. They shoot away from the black hole, faster than they've ever traveled before. Everyone is cheering, Vero added softly, crying and laughing at the same time, the way humans do when they survive something impossible. But they're not safe yet, Kessa pointed out. The reactor is still critical. Chen has to carefully bring it back down to safe levels. One wrong move and it could still explode. He does it, though, Mickey said with certainty. With steady hands and careful calculations, he brings the reactor back under control, and the Perseus continues on its journey to Haven's Gate. They arrive a bit late, Tarn concluded, and with a ship that needs major repairs. But all 20,000 colonists survive. Because humans don't give up, because humans work together, because humans are stubborn enough to slingshot around a black hole rather than accept their fate. The 7 cubs sat back, satisfied with their ending. Their fur glowed with warm, happy colors. They looked at each other with pride. That was a good story, Kessa said. We finished it the way Captain Zhao would have, Pip agreed. We understood the lesson, Tarn added, about human resilience and creativity. At that moment, Vesha entered the observation deck, having returned from her medical checkup. She saw Captain Zhao asleep in her chair, and the cubs gathered nearby. What happened here? Vesha asked quietly. Captain Zhao fell asleep in the middle of a story, Mickey explained in a whisper. So we finished it ourselves. Vesha's fur rippled with amused green. Did you now? And how did the story end? The humans survived, all 7 cubs said together. Of course they did, Vesha chuckled. That's how human stories always end? She gently draped a thermal blanket over Captain Zhao, letting the exhausted humans sleep. Then she herded the cubs toward their quarters, listening as they eagerly recounted the ending they'd created. Later, when Zhao finally woke up several hours later, she found a data pad on her lap. On it was a message from the cubs, written in their careful, still-learning standard English. Dear Captain Zhao, You fell asleep before finishing the story about the Perseus. We hope you had good rest. We finished the story ourselves. We think we got it right. The humans survived because they worked together and didn't give up. That's what humans do. Thank you for teaching us. We can't wait for the next story." Attached to the message was their complete version of the story's ending, written from 7 different perspectives as each cub contributed their part. Captain Zhao read through it, a smile growing on her face. They'd gotten it exactly right. They'd understood not just the plot mechanics of human storytelling, but the deeper themes, the values and characteristics that defined humanity's place in the galaxy. These young Kiksari had learned their lessons well, and somehow, by falling asleep mid-sentence, Zhao had given them something even more valuable than another story. She'd given them the confidence to tell stories themselves, to understand that they could grasp the essence of human nature and express it in their own voices. She saved their story carefully in her personal files, already planning to share it with the Cultural Exchange Oversight Committee. This was what the program was meant to achieve: true understanding between species, deep enough that even cubs could capture the spirit of another species' stories. As she got up to prepare for her next shift, Zhao made a mental note to be more careful about her sleep schedule. But she also couldn't help feeling that her accidental nap had led to something special. The cubs hadn't just finished her story. They'd made it their own. And in doing so, they'd proven they understood what it meant to be human better than most species who'd known humanity for decades. The next evening, when she gathered with the cubs again, they begged her to start a new story. "Of course," Zhao said, settling into her chair. "But this time, if I fall asleep, I trust you all to finish it properly." The cub's fur glowed bright with happy colors, and Mickey chirped, "We know how human stories end now. The humans always find a way." "That's right," Zhao agreed. "We always do." And she began another tale of human determination, knowing that even if she dozed off mid-sentence again, 7 young Kiksari would be ready to carry the story forward, understanding in their hearts what it meant to tell a truly human story.